Welcome to Association Chat, a podcast devoted to talking about all things associations, nonprofits, and the future for building communities. In a world where there's an association for everything, that gives us a lot to talk about. So let's get started with your host, KiKi L'Italien. So this week we're talking about VR and AR, and we're talking about VR and AR, or AR and VR for associations with Tyler Gates. Okay, so Tyler is the principal of Brightline Interactive. Brightline Interactive creates cutting-edge interactive experiences and simulations, including immersive technologies like AR, VR, sensor integration, body tracking, touchscreen, and much, much more for commercial brands, as well as military, government, and yes, even associations. So welcome, Tyler. We're going to talk with you today. Yes.
Thank you very much, KiKi. It's great to be here.
I'm so excited for you to be here because I want to find out why associations need to care about AR and VR. And I want to find out not just why they should care, but what the difference is between the two, because these things get confused all the time. So can you help us out a little bit?
Definitely. And I'll say this too, just especially because we're talking specifically about associations. I'm also the president of the VR AR Association.
Yes.
Washington, D.C. And as a part of that, we're heavily involved in the association, and the VR AR Association is divided up by committees. And we chair the Marketing and Advertising Committee as well as the Defense and Intelligence Committee. And then we host the podcast for the VR AR Association. So we certainly think that VR and AR as communication mediums are critical for associations, especially even our own. But just to kind of define the two, just to kind of maybe clarify a little bit, really virtual and augmented reality are two separate technologies. They have lots of things in common. But they're really the best way to think about the difference between the two is really just trying to define the use case. Mm-hmm. And so somebody is going to use augmented reality when you want to see the actual real world around you. So the really technologically, the difference between augmented and virtual reality is about what's called occlusion, which just basically means how much of the real world is visible and not actually visible. In augmented reality, you have what's called partial occlusion, where you can look out and see the real world. So whether or not maybe you might be wearing a head-mounted display like a HoloLens or Magic Leap or something like that, and you're seeing out to the real world, but then we actually place graphic content on the real world that you see.
Right.
Graphic content can actually be relative to things like furniture and the walls and things like that in the physical space. Whereas virtual reality is what's called full occlusion. So you don't see any part of the real world. You're in a head-mounted display, and inside that head-mounted display, you're somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And you're using the head-mounted display to see something that doesn't exist yet, or is too difficult to display in real life, or is to communicate a message. There's lots of different reasons for it. But really, it's just about when people come to us and ask, should we use AR or VR? It really is, my question is back to them, what are you trying to communicate? And what is the environment for that communication? What's the target demographic? Those sorts of things can determine what type of technology to utilize.
I think I hear a lot of people talking about wanting Terminator Vision so that when they're able to go in and like say to a networking reception or something like that with members, that they suddenly, instead of having to do the awkward look at the name tag, that it just pops up and uses something like facial recognition. How close are we to anything like that?
I mean, technologically speaking, we're already there. I mean, it's already possible to do that. It's just, there currently are not, it really takes a company to invest in creating that. It just, right. There's a difference between what's actually possible and what has actually been funded.
Right. As always, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Well, and I did want to ask about that because it seems like if you're talking about augmented reality, where you're using some of the environment around you and things like that, versus creating a whole entire world, that there would be different costs associated with some of that. So, is that the case?
Yeah, and I would say generally speaking, it AR can tend to be less expensive only because there's, like to your point, there's less graphic creation.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it really depends on what type of augmented reality. So if you're just going to display, let's say that you're trying to communicate, you're a medical association and you're trying to communicate about the heart, the human
Mhm.
heart, and you want to show diseases of the human heart. If you're only using one object, the human heart, then it's easier to use augmented reality because you can play just that one piece of graphic content, and show different animations on that one piece of graphic content, but you don't have to create the entire operating room.
Mhm.
Whereas, like, with virtual reality, if maybe the use case is you actually want to show a heart transplant or something like that, or you want to do training or simulation based on that, then you would want to use virtual reality because then we can actually recreate the whole scene. So generally speaking, I would say from a graphic content creation perspective, augmented reality tends to be less expensive because there's less graphic content. But at the same time, there are ways to certainly shift that paradigm with augmented reality. And that's doing augmented reality that has any sort of persistence. So you're going to like drop augmented reality content into the physical world and have it stay there in the physical world. The development cost to do that is more expensive than just displaying AR content from your phone screen or something like that. And so there's not really, it really kind of depends on the project to know, which one is more or less cost effective. Because you can create a virtual reality scene that is very simple. In a lot of ways, you don't have to do any sort of spatial anchors or geotagging or any depth perception or occlusion or people occlusion or segmentation. There's all these different types of technological terms in the augmented reality space
Mhm.
based on what's now possible, that requires more development than sort of previous versions of augmented reality a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean, recently in the news, recently to us, I'm not sure when people are going to be listening to this, but recently in the news, the big story was Walmart talking about, it was all about the training and stuff that was going on with that. And are you seeing now that we have companies like Walmart that are starting to, use this for training. Is this reflecting what you're seeing as far as organizations reaching out to you and the way that it's being used, primarily with the projects that you're being engaged in, or,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I mean, there really is kind of, for us, we've been around, we're working on our 16th year in operation. And so typically what happens for us is we have one foot in the technological space where industry currently understands, and what they're asking for, what they're interested in, what they see in sort of pop culture. And there's that one area, but then there's this other whole area. We have our other foot squarely planted in where the technology is going. And what we get to do, we get sort of these front row seats to see the progression happen. When we first realized the ability, the capability from a consumer off the shelf version of virtual reality back in, I would say, probably 2012, 2013 timeframe, we knew at that point that it was going to transform the way that brands and associations communicate. And
Mhm.
so, but we just had to kind of wait until people could catch up to the understanding. And what helps people catch up to the understanding is, the larger brands investing in the technology, recognizing that it's significantly powerful, and investing in the technology. And that's exactly, to your point, that's what Walmart has done. And they did back in September, they did a test essentially to see, does virtual reality deliver, is it a better training mechanism for new staff training? And that's where they started. and they recognized a 15 to 20% increase in comprehension during their new staff training. But then on top of that, they also recognized almost 100% satisfaction rate from their new staff going through training. So did you enjoy training?
Right.
Most people would probably answer, no, I didn't enjoy training, but these employees are now saying, yes, we loved training. Training was so much fun. It was very interactive. It was very contextualized, and I understand how to respond to the customer better. And the reason for that is because they're utilizing virtual reality. So then they decided they said, okay, well, this was a great test. We're going to invest heavily into this. And so they now have 4 Oculus Go's in every super center across the country. Okay. And they have 2 Oculus Go's in every small sort of local marketplace, Walmart, across the country. That's about 17,000 units of head-mounted displays. It's
Right.
and roughly it's somewhere between $3.5 to $4 million of investment in just hardware.
Well, and that
You
oh,
have
sorry.
a big brand like that doing that, and that really helps kind of turn the tide for other brands to see, oh, well, Walmart's doing that. And it's not just, and I think the important part to point out is it's not just novelty. It's not something Walmart's doing because it's futuristic and cool. They're doing it because it's significantly, categorically better.
Right.
And overall, it's cheaper for them to train that way than it is for them to have hired staff and fly people into schoolhouses and do all that, do that methodology.
I mean, I do think it's really remarkable because, to your point, Walmart isn't known for doing things because they're hip and cool. And so when you see like Walmart deciding to do something, you have to know that they're really looking for something that's effective, that's going to help them make more money, right? And the fact that the satisfaction rates are so high on both sides and the training is more effective, I mean, it has to be a real bellwether for seeing things change, more people wanting to invest in something like this for their training. Now, we've talked a lot about training, but we haven't talked a lot about some of the other use cases, which, can be all kinds of things like with education and stuff like that. What are some other ways that you're seeing associations really begin to use AR and VR?
Yeah, I mean, it's so virtual reality, augmented virtual reality, what I sort of refer to them collectively as immersive technology.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing associations leverage, or we're actually encouraging associations to leverage immersive technology in a couple of sort of key stakeholder areas. And I would say that the 2 biggest are in creating value to members. Additional value to members, and what that does is drives membership engagement, where if you're recognizing decreases or drops in membership additions and the level of engagement, it's a great tool to re-engage your members in a different way. And I can go into more detail on that. But the second way that we're seeing it, that we're encouraging it to be used, is for advocacy. Most associations really, they were originally founded typically around this sort of the dinner table of some sort of issue, topic area, sort of segment of the market or something like that. And in a lot of ways, those associations play a big role in providing the appropriate advocacy for that topic or that issue. And we're actually working actively right now with American College of Preventive Medicine they're an association, and we're working with them to build a tool that they can use for all their fly-ins for when they send members and staff for Hill visits in Washington, D.C. to go and talk to members of Congress around preventable issues for children. We're actually using virtual reality to standardize the context. And what I mean by that is, as American College of Preventive Medicine, they have experts in their field, these subject matter experts who have a significant amount of information around these topic areas. And that information, the member of Congress doesn't necessarily have awareness of that information. And when you have a 30-minute meeting with that member of Congress, you're trying to communicate a lot of information and try to get them to see your perspective so that they may change their mind or agree with you from a legislative perspective. And so in that 30-minute time segment that you have, it's critical that you try to translate the context around which about which you're speaking. And so instead of using PowerPoint or showing videos or showing pictures or something like that, we're saying use virtual reality, because virtual reality is a faster way to communicate the information and create comprehension. We can create more comprehension in a 3 to 4 minute virtual reality experience than you could communicate in hours, if not days of time communicating verbally.
I mean, I love this idea because while 3 to 4 minutes doesn't sound like a lot, when you have a limited amount of time to convey not just your point, because it's not just about information, but when you're really trying to compel someone to hear you and understand and feel, what better way to have them to really compel them to feel that emotion than to drop them into that virtual reality. And so I can see where that would be really effective.
Yeah, and I love that you bring that up, because it's so true. I mean, this was Chris Milk, who's a famous video producer and famous sort of in the virtual reality space. He says that virtual reality is the ultimate empathy machine. And the reason for that is because virtual reality gives you the ability to have a lived experience that didn't actually happen. And that really is the true power behind virtual reality. And it's, I would say, major differentiator from other types of communication, because other types of communication really just compel you to memorize facts.
Mm-hmm.
You watch something on screen, you read something in a book or online or whatever the case may be, and you're memorizing facts. Whereas in virtual reality, you're actually committing your lived experience to memory. And you're actually creating a memory in your brain. And so when you remember back whatever the virtual reality experience that you did, when you're remembering back, you're not remembering it as memorized data, you're remembering it as a memory that you lived. And there's a significant difference in your brain between those two things. And it's kind of like the easiest way to describe that is, asking the question, how much do you remember from school? Factually, how much do you remember? I know for me, much, right?
The test will be at the end of this interview.
Exactly. Right. But I do remember the things that I did and the experiences that I had.
Right.
And that's the power. That's the difference between communicating with every other type of method for communication and communicating with virtual and augmented reality, is that using virtual and augmented reality, you can create a lived experience for people.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about this example and thinking about, is it watching a video, would watching a video really make me feel as much as being dropped into, like, I'm looking around and I'm seeing, stuff, I'm there. Right. And so it does seem to be a way that would be compelling, that would really convey both information and the feeling and the emotion connected to an experience. So, I know we're running short on time, but I want to talk a little bit more about when somebody is thinking, okay, yeah, no, you sold me, I'm really interested, I want to look into how to make all of this happen. What are some of the first steps? What are some of the things that they need to be asking themselves to get at the most effective use of this technology?
It's a great question. I mean, it can be a daunting thing to sort of arrive at the point of, okay, I recognize that virtual reality is significantly powerful, and I want to be involved in the project that's creating it, or I really need to use virtual reality. It really is find the right partner who is actually creating the content, who are creating virtual reality experiences, because it's a new technology, but it's also a new medium of communication. And so it means that we have to think about things in a much different way. Like, for example, let's for an association, you have a logo, okay? And your logo exists two-dimensionally. right? It only exists on the screen or on a piece of printed material, right? And we always just sort of exemplify this. We ask the question, what's on the backside of your logo?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't know because you've never created your logo in a three-dimensional space. Well, that's just the logo. So there's other aspects, other ways to think about creating virtual reality that kind of challenge your traditional ways of communicating. And so
Right.
it's really important to get in touch with an organization who has a significant amount of experience in creating the content. I would say that's step number one, is find a company who's actually creating virtual reality content, and let them sort of help shepherd you along the way of creating the content for your organization. Because it's too much. It's too much for the individual association employee that isn't their normal practice to create virtual reality content.
Right.
And it's much better time spent to work with a professional organization who does it for a living,
Mm-hmm.
than it is to try to learn how to create virtual reality content on your own. But that learning process in conjunction with another company tends to be a quick one, because it really is, virtual reality is a new way to communicate. And so it's a new way to see the world around you. But once you do it yourself, and you then get a better understanding of how you would actually deploy the information. That's probably one of my favorite parts about my job, is that on a regular basis, we get to put people in virtual reality for the first time. And I know it's going to be powerful to them, but then when they do it, they then come out of virtual reality with all kinds of ideas, because they have seen a new way to communicate, but they're seeing it in their own context based on their own topics and issues and things that they want to communicate. And so you see this mind meld happen where the light bulb goes off and there's this new way to communicate. And now they're thinking about all the things that they want to say. But now because they've tried virtual reality and they're working with a reputable company, they're able to actually kind of come alongside that company who's creating the content, and they're able to be the subject matter expert for what that virtual reality is going to be.
I'm laughing because I remember coming over to visit the Brightline Interactive offices, and you guys let me jump in. And I think even if you've had a virtual reality experience, first of all, things are changing all the time. But secondly, you guys put me in there, and even though I guess I'd had experiences before, I think most of us don't on a daily basis. And so when you put yourself in that environment, you begin to see that there are all kinds of other opportunities and ways that you can build and create and communicate with people. And I remember the pictures that Sophia got of in the video, where
Right.
I was just like, I mean, it was amazing. And by the way, anyone who's listening to this or watching this, you should definitely reach out to Tyler and his team to figure out when you can stop by, because it is kind of half maker workshop, half like super tech, half hangout creative space. I mean, it's just, I guess that's more than a whole if I'm doing half, but you get my point.
Yeah.
Very cool space, very creative, and definitely something where you guys are obviously connected to your imaginations and your creativity all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll say too. Well, first of all, thank you for that. And please, come one, come all. We love, it's my favorite part about my job, is to introduce people to a new way of seeing the world. But it's also kind of to go back a little bit to the Walmart example.
Mm-hmm.
What Walmart has done is they have normalized virtual reality in a way that people can understand that there's an actual logistical and functional purpose of virtual reality. And another one that I want to mention is our friends at Microsoft. I had the general manager for education at Microsoft on our podcast about a month ago. We haven't pushed the episode out yet, so we're going to do that. But they talked about a study that they've been doing, they've been working on for at least the last year. And that study is now out. It's a white paper, and I can certainly send it to you so you can check it out as well. Because for people who are interested in that you may be inside your organization, you may be sitting there as the one solitary person who is holding up the banner flag for VR, but your leadership is saying, well, we don't do video games, or we don't invest in, X, Y, or Z. There's all kinds of negative things that people can say about the technology. But now what Microsoft has done is they've really kind of lifted a lot of that burden, because they're now saying, look, remove the novelty, remove the futuristic coolness of it, remove all of that, take all that off the table, because virtual reality is actually a faster way to communicate and with higher levels of comprehension. And what they've done is they did a study, now I'm going to paraphrase the whole thing, but for the sake of time, but they've done this study where they put university students in lecture-based learning, which is sort of traditional education, and they put university students in virtualized learning scenarios. And it's the same content, it's the same curriculum, and they decided on a minimum standard for comprehension. And the students in the virtualized learning scenario arrived at that minimum standard for comprehension 60% faster, 60.
Wow.
60% faster, with an entire increase in a letter grade. And so it is just categorically a better way to communicate. And one last thing about that, the reason why is because learning is really translation of data. You have information and you want to give me that information, you're going to speak it out loud, which is the spoken word. You're going to write it down, the written word, or you're going to draw pictures, making beautiful graphics and 3D models and things like that people do. And those are really the ways of communicating prior to virtual reality. In all of those ways of communicating, you're just translating. So I don't know if you do this, but when I'm reading a book, I'm usually creating a picture in my mind while I'm reading. And what my brain is doing is translating the data. So I'm taking the actual data, it's been written down. Now I'm taking in that written word, I'm reading it, but then my brain is translating it into an image, a contextualized image in my own head. Now, who knows whether or not that image is the right one? I don't know. But so the power of virtual reality is you get to skip all of those translation methodologies. And it is straight to the brain. The actual visualized context is being delivered straight to the brain. And that's why you can get the information faster with higher levels of comprehension, because you skip all these steps of trying to interpret the translation tool, like the written word.
Right. This is fascinating. And I'm thinking that if I were involved in education, if I were involved in certification, certainly, which is such an important area for associations, I would be thinking very seriously about how to apply that to my own organization. So I would definitely, and if you have a link or something, we can put that in the show notes later, and share that. Well, I wanted to ask you before I let you go. We talked a lot about where people should start and what they should be thinking about before they reach out and find out more information from you guys. But what about you? Like, you are able to do all kinds of amazing things, and you are learning all the time. And definitely with the association, you're hearing from all of the different members too about new stuff that they're trying. So what's something that you, Tyler Gates, would love to work on project-wise, like, a dream project that would be like, okay, anybody who has the money out there to do this, let's do this?
Yeah, I love that question. Nobody ever asks me that, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, look, I want to create what I call the visually contextualized web, or the visual web. And what I mean by that, in the context of an association, if you're trying to give, what you're trying to do essentially is, I would say, and this is a broad stroke, but generally speaking, you're taking a topic area and you're creating conversation around that topic area and creating community around that topic area. And then the expectation or the hope is that generated community is going to create value for the rest of the community, and that it's going to be this sort of ongoing cycle. The general challenge with that is that you have people all over the world who are separated, who are disconnected, and they're not able to plug in to a visually contextualized system that allows them to understand what's going on with the association, what's happening, what's new, what's coming next, those sorts of things. And to be able to leverage virtual reality to deliver that communication on demand in a visually contextualized way that matters to both the sender and the recipient is something that I believe associations, if they're not doing it already, or if they're not thinking about it already, they should be. And it's, to me, it's tantamount to the way that people understood the internet when the internet, I would say again in the late 90s, early 2000s, when people started to realize that you can have ubiquitous, simultaneous access to information.
Yes.
And nowadays, that to us, that's like so commonplace that we don't even think that that was at one point novelty.
Right.
But it was novelty at one point. Whereas now it's the same thing with virtual reality, where can you imagine how much more effective it would be to be able to go into virtual reality and understand all of the issue areas that privileged children face across the country. It would be very powerful to fully get a context of that, but it's very difficult to do that right now because video production costs are expensive. It's difficult to sort of distribute content like that across the globe. But see, in virtual reality, you can have that where somebody can just go into that space and they can spend time in that space as if they were actually there. And so I would love to work on any project like that where I can bring awareness to a people group and not to get, to sort of stay high level from a political standpoint, but just, I would say that to me, what makes me really passionate about virtual reality is that it's a way that we can leverage technology to create empathy, awareness, compassion, and honestly, overall love for people around the world. Most of disagreement, I would say in general, is due to a lack of information. Mm-hmm. Most hatred is due to ignorance. And so we can solve those large problems with technologies like virtual reality because we can all of a sudden make you aware of an entire people group that you didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
You didn't know how they lived or what their circumstances are. And we can all of a sudden make you visually, contextually aware in a way that you lived a memory. And now that you've lived that memory, now that's going to affect the way that you make decisions and the way that you think and the way that you care about the people around you. And so for me, the dream projects are to work with the technology in ways that, that have massive effect on the world.
I mean, I love that answer so much. Whether or not you believe me, I just hope you do, because I'm all about community. And I think that, when I look out and I think about the social isolation that people are facing, and now they're tying that to so much like early onset of dementia, and even people not adhering to therapies, and loneliness, and the lack of trust that people have. And, when you think about how technology might be able to actually help, and thinking about this as you were saying, Chris Milk saying the ultimate empathy machine, that could be incredible for associations or anyone really out there trying to figure out how to connect.
Yeah, and I'll say we're working on projects right now where we're using virtual reality to address post-traumatic stress. We're using virtual reality to address the opioid addiction crises, and we're using virtual reality to not just as a communication tool to help people understand the impact, the devastating impact of some of these issue areas, but we're also actually using virtual reality for treatment. And so there are ways to leverage the technology well beyond, we oftentimes get the comparison, I say this often, that people understand a new thing through the lens of an old thing. And so you have people who understand virtual reality through the lens of the next closest thing that they actually do understand, which is video games. And so it's virtual reality. It may have birthed, out of the video game industry, but it is well beyond that now. And we're using it in the architecture, engineering, and construction space. We're using it with, military and government simulation. We're using it for flood disaster response training. We're using it for safety training. It's being used in the medical space. I mean, there's things well beyond video games in industries that wouldn't touch video game technology with a 10-foot pole, but they're now using virtual reality because they've realized what we've known for the last 6 years is that it is categorically better. It's cheaper overall, and it delivers your message more directly to those that matter in a way that they're going to comprehend it and be able to make actionable decisions.
Well, I appreciate so much that you took the time to talk with Association Chat today. And I want to thank everyone who's listening. I hope you've learned something helpful today that will help you to reach your members, to reach more people, and maybe to maybe build some empathy in. Please join us next time. And until next time, everyone, keep asking questions to learn every day. As Joseph Campbell once said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. All right. Thank you so much, Tyler.
Thank you very much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Well, thanks for listening to Association Chat, produced by KiKi L'Italien. For more information on Association Chat, go to associationchat.com.